Hi everyone, I'm Jeremy Reynolds, Alpha Money Coach, your money coach from the Jeremy Reynolds Money Coach podcast, and also here live at the Getting Started in Finance course. I'm continuing talking about interest-only loans. So, to pardon the pun, but hopefully you're interested in the lack of principle, which is a little bit confusing, but let's get to the point. What has been racking my brain, and been making me do backflips a little bit, is when I'm thinking about these interest-only loans that are happening, is a very simple point. Why are mortgage brokers recommending interest-only loans to everyone that asks for an interest-only loan? So should everyone be offered this? I'm going to give you a simple example and translation that you as a homeowner, a property owner, or would-be investment property owner that's potentially looking at an interest-only loan will make sense to you. So let's in this case view you as a patient, and let's view the mortgage broker as your doctor. So you go to the doctor, okay, and you say, "Mr. Doctor, I want a box of this medication. I want these red pills because this hurts." And the doctor says, "Oh, of course. If that's what you want, and that's absolutely what you want, I'm going to give it to you. Here you are, please take it." Let that sit for just one moment. It sounds absolutely ridiculous, doesn't it? It sounds dangerous. It sounds scary. That looks like malpractice to me. It seems like a breach of the Hippocratic Oath. Why? Clients can't self-diagnose and self-prescribe, can they? Even if it is in the presence of a doctor. It's the doctor's duty, it's their role ethically to, regardless of what the client initially comes in saying, so of course there's going to be some pain, they've got a reason for being there, to actually look deeper, to ask questions, to provide an examination, and then only once an accurate diagnosis is made, prescribe the relevant treatment or medication. Now, this is what should happen with a broker. It doesn't always happen, but this is what does happen with an Alpha Finance Solutions broker that's been trained through my systems, such as the Getting Started in Finance course. So let's throw out the textbooks, let's throw out the 1950s sales training or customer service training, let's just call it training, broker training that says, you know what, let's give Mr. or Mrs. customer what they want. It's our duty to give them what they want. No, our duty, our role is to ensure that we help a client solve their problems by looking at their needs and therefore making accurate prescription, or we give them an accurate proposal, an accurate assessment of those needs, of those problems, and apply an accurate solution. Now, this is what I'm going to apply to interest-only loans. So I'm going to tell you the exact same story, now using the words interest-only loans. So, brokers are meeting with clients, so this is the doctor, the patient, and the patient is going in to seeing the doctor saying, "I need this medication, I need an interest-only loan, that's what I want, because I'm buying an investment property. And then Mr. Broker says, oh yes, you know what you want. You know your situation better than me. You understand what you want more than me. I had best give you what you want. Not taking into consideration individual circumstances, not taking into consideration why they're asking for that, why they need it, and therefore really being negligent in what they're offering. And what I'm going to tell you now, of zero value to that client. The client knows what they want, they know how to do it, and they actually could make an accurate assessment themselves, which they can't. They're not a credit license holder or credit representative. They're not deemed by the industry to make an accurate assessment of their own finances or with any level of impartiality or in an unbiased manner at all, or to any level of standards. They cannot do it. So let's look at this. Why, back to the question, why are people unnecessarily being offered interest-only loans? The most basic answer, and there are many more which I'm going to cover in my series here, is because mortgage brokers aren't doing their job. They're assuming the client knows what they need, and they're assuming that the client knows how to solve their problem, and it's their job to make sure the order gets delivered. Absolutely wrong. The mortgage broker in these situations coming in when a client says, yep, and I'm fast tracking this, there's a lot more scripts and dialogue, and there's fact finds, there's needs-based questions, there's financial-based questions, there's goal-based questions, there's problem-based questions, but let's just bring this all together. Okay, first of all, why do they think they need an interest-only loan? What is their current situation? What is their future goals? What are their current problems that need solved? And what do these things look like, all put together into a needs analysis based on, and then alongside what the funders or banks can offer. In this situation, many outcomes can occur. An Alpha Finance Solutions mortgage broker is going to look at these things. Number one, is an interest-only loan suitable at all? Is it more beneficial to place the client in a principal and interest loan, knowing that if a client with the same bank, so if there was two options even within one bank, to say, well, we've got an interest-only loan or a principal and interest-only loan, there's actually lower rates for the principal and interest. So the level of discrepancy between someone actually paying off their loan and paying off purely the interest could be not a big enough amount to really justify doing so from a savings perspective. The next question would be, the next thing that a lot of the clients say is, well, it's an investment property. I've been told that because it's an investment property, getting an interest-only loan is best. What needs to be carried on there is it best, but we need to work out what is best for your individual situation and best for your individual situation and what you're wanting to achieve from it. So your immediate, short-term, long-term goals all rolled into their one. See, you're probably gathering that this is quite different from purely saying, hey, let's get you the interest-only loan. Now they say, well, the client says, well, you know, who, and I would ask, well, if you don't mind me asking, why do you think you need an interest-only loan? And they gave the basic answer, where have you sourced the information? They go, well, I've heard that it's good for gearing reasons, negative gearing and so forth. And I'm not going to talk about gearing. This is really an accounting question. And what I would refer to FAB Tax and Accounting here for this one at a later date and look at some previous videos. But what I'll say here is there going to be any benefit to the client? Is there that gearing issues should be actually identified? Is there any reason for that? Does that fit with individual circumstance? And have they received advice regarding this for their situation? And not just them, the combined borrowers or their household. For instance, it could be Mr. and Mrs. Client's circumstance should be well directed from the accountant, and I would recommend Fab Tax and Accounting to do this. Next thing I would ask as well is, are you thinking that you need to do this purely from a repayment perspective, or because you can't afford to pay off the principal? If you can't, and that could be an answer. Now, this is a really important conversation to have with every client. It's not enough that a mortgage broker can put a client into a loan. They have to ensure that they can make the repayments and without any due hardship now or into the future. So yes, I will ask you lots of detailed questions about your current expenses and your future expenses. Some of this may be purely numeric, but largely the discretionary side has a lot to do with your values, a lot has to do with your financial knowledge, and also there's some character elements of why you're spending that money. Why can't you afford to pay principal and interest as well? I'd actually like to help you solve the real problem if that's the issue. If you think, well, I've got to get interest only, there's potentially no gearing issues associated, there's no strategy behind interest only, I just can't afford principal and interest. So let's look at some really big things that can help. I'd like to talk to you about the actual property. Now, if it's a purchase, let's deal with the big issue. We can talk about lowering your repayments, getting the best rate, which we do. I will actually do that, get you the best interest rate for your situation. Trying to minimise your repayments, but I also want to minimise the amount of time it's going to take to pay off the loan. So there's a bit of give and take here about minimising and keeping your repayments low, but also making sure that we're keeping your overall amount you're going to pay for your loan over the 25, 30 years, or even 15 to 20 years, or even 10 years if we have the right dynamics there, to actually pay the least interest over the term of the loan as well. These are crucial factors. So before we get to that, let's actually prevent a problem. Let's actually deal with things before we get to that stage. The first question I'll be asking about is the property. Now, a mortgage broker can only give advice about credit or credit for the loan or in the context of the loan. So we're not going to say that's a good price for a property, that's good value. That's actually outside the scope of a mortgage broker. But I can ask you a pretty simple line of questions of why that property. Based on your borrowing capacity, based on what you can repay, that could be a stretch. Number one, would you like to hear from, would you like me to make contact? Would you like me to put you in contact with a real estate agent that has a lot of knowledge on this, that can actually work from a position of, this is your budget, what properties can I afford, as opposed to, I like that property, let's organise finances that could potentially meet that, but may not be able to meet that. Now, this could mean a couple of things. Get a smaller property in the same area. Potentially it's a 3-bedroom as opposed to the 4-bedroom. And this is like, let's talking in the investment space. Or, well, what is the average property price in the next suburb over that's got potentially the same demographics, the same things you need, but property prices may be lesser. Now, this ultimately will save you money in repayments. Why? Because you're borrowing less money. Borrowing less money, smaller debt, smaller repayments, smaller fees and charges also as well if we get into LMI territory. So rather than tackling from an affordability perspective, interest, let's go interest only, and let's tongue-in-cheek just say it's for investment purposes, let's actually deal with the problem outside the loan as well as inside the loan to help you further along. Now, this is all part of what I would call the diagnosis stage. So the broker, again, being the doctor, the client being the patient. It's not good enough for us to make broad assumptions. It's not good enough for us to say, what do you want? And then let's give it to you. Because you might be wrong. And we're willing to work with you to get from not just point A to point B, which point A to point B is getting you the loan. Now, a lot happens in a year, and again, we'll continue to review these things over 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and onwards. But we also need to look at what's going to happen over this longer term. For these reasons, I encourage that and really a holistic perspective on this, working with our team, but also knowing that we have an ethical position on this. The ethical position might be that, well, let's borrow less money. Now, why aren't brokers in it? I've gone on a tangent. It started about interest-only loans, but it's going to come back to that. Well, why aren't they deterring it? Why aren't the brokers in deterring this? So I've mentioned that they might not know. When I say they might not know, they might be poorly trained, and they have always worked in a position of being transactional, okay? And again, I think that but not being knowledgeable is still being negligent. It doesn't make any difference. But second of all, what about their hip pocket? Many brokers out there would like to give a client the interest-only loan for affordability reasons and repayment reasons, though it's not a good reason, purely because they want the maximum loan so they get the maximum amount of commission. That's poor business, that's unethical. What you can be sure of with an Alpha Finance Solutions broker, an option will always exist to say, well, yes, potentially you need to wait to buy that property until you can afford it. But what I'd like to do is create a detailed and simple to follow plan so you can do it, and that not just you, but me as a professional that's seen these things many times before you, can actually have a greater level of certainty and confidence that you will be able to make those repayments, not only make those repayments, but you can pay off the debt if that's a given strategy, and actually build towards bigger and better things in the future. Please comment. Love to hear your feedback. Again, shortly this will also be available on the podcast. And again, for those who are listening on the podcast, please subscribe and please provide a 5-star rating. I'm Jeremy Reynolds, Alpha Money Coach, and I'm here to help.